Hey, this week in Austin real estate, we found out that our inventory level is going down. Interesting information. I'll share you more on that towards the end here. We're seeing very consistent demand, and we're going to jump right into it. This is the end of June, and we're calling it week 5 of June. And we're going to hit you with some heavy statistics here, real quick. All right, so last week we hit a peak of inventory, and I mentioned that was a 14-year high, over 12,266 listings. It dropped a little bit. We're under that number by about 100 listings this week. So we'll talk about why that turned around here in a second, but let's look at the other stats before we get there. Our new active listings last week, 952. That's down from over 1,000 the last couple of weeks. So the number of people going on the market is starting to decrease, which if you're a seller, that's good. That means less competition coming on the market new. And then when we're looking at new pending inventory, pending meaning that they went under contract, we slipped from 835 to 830 last week. You can see based on the red graph here that we were last year as high as 889. So you can see where our pendings are slowing down a bit versus the year before. So that's interesting information for sure. So let's go ahead and talk more about new active listings last week versus new pending. So we already gave you the number. You see there's still a gap. The gap between the number of homes going pending versus the number of homes going on the market, that gap is starting to close, and that's leading to a little bit less inventory. Now, I'm going to show you why the inventory level has dropped off a bit. Not a huge amount, but about 100 fewer listings at the end of last week versus the week before. This here is the failed listing graph. So as you can see, well, looking at last year's graph, which is in red, you can see the spikes. The spikes happen at the end of each month. So in many cases, realtors will just make the listing expire at the end of a month, at the end of a calendar month. So if you had a 90-day listing, maybe you listed it in the middle of a month. So maybe it's 90 days plus 15 days or whatever to have it expire at the end of a month. It makes things simpler, easier to keep track, and so forth. So, but for last week, you can see we had a real spiky number here. We had 478 failed listings in 1 week. Now, the week before, we only had 267. In fact, the peak of last month, the peak of would be basically end of May, was 283 versus 478. So you can see you have double the number of failed listings this last month in June than in the month of May. So those people are throwing in the towel. I guess they realize that if they're not getting the activity they want and not getting offers, they're just pulling it off the market for the next season or whatever the case might be. So these failed listings are what caused the inventory to go down. So when we look at weeks of inventory is really should be labeled absorption rate, because what that means is if we sold everything that we have listed right now, all 12,000 listings, and based on a clip of right now 830 per week, it would take 14.66 weeks to eliminate all that inventory with no new listings coming on the market. Now that's just down very slightly from the week before, but it is down. So we'll have to see what happens with the trend of fewer listings coming on the market each week and a very steady stream of pendings that we've had either right above or right under 900 per week. This line right here might flatline. In other words, we're not going to see a growth in the weeks of inventory, is my prediction, or ever so slightly because of the trend of fewer listings coming on the market. So that bodes well for sellers, and but yet buyers still have a great selection of homes to look at right now. So if we were to say it was a tug of war between a buyer's market and a seller's market, I would say it's pivoted a little bit towards the buyer's market in the last several weeks. But now all of a sudden it's getting a little pullback on the seller's market side. So we're really close to what I consider to be equilibrium in the marketplace, where neither side has an unfair advantage going out in the sales world. Now, the last thing we want to talk about, which we talk about all the time, my favorite thing to talk about, mortgage interest rates. Okay. So mortgage interest rates have reduced down yet another week in a row. It's the lowest level in the last 3 months. And we're down to 6.86, which is not dramatically low, but we were as high as 7.22 back in the beginning of May. So now we're at the beginning of July, and 2 months later, we're down, 30 basis points. So that's pretty good. That's pretty exciting. A little bit more than that, actually. And so we see that there will be a downward trend on interest rates. Just the fact that they are dropping just a hair every single week is a good thing for sellers, because that makes it more affordable for buyers. Buyers see affordability and maybe a little competition. They'll pay a little bit more because the rates are sliding down a little bit. Now, here's my prediction. We're not going to see a huge interest rate drop this year. So if you're waiting to sell or waiting to buy based on interest rates, I wouldn't wait this year. In fact, I wouldn't even wait till spring of next year, because there's nothing in the cards that says that we should actually see a dramatic drop of like 1% in the interest rates. It will slide down, and I predict maybe 0.5% lower, maybe by the end of the year, barring any craziness that we see after the election or any of that sort of stuff. But I speculate there. So anyway, until next week, we'll have more exciting news for you then to see if our trend is flat or if our inventory goes up or down. We'll see it. Now, be sure to call us if you have any questions, or email or text. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you again soon.